The night my wife's lawyer stood up in a courtroom and said I had taken the payroll taxes out of my own crew's paychecks. There was a caterer's deposit sitting paid in full, in my name, for our 10th anniversary party. I had been planning that party for a year. She had been doing something else for a year. And there was one line on the back of the guest list in her handwriting that I did not understand until everything was already gone. If you have ever been the person who signs whatever gets put in front of you, because signing is quicker than a fight, stay with me. That habit is the whole reason a woman I was married to for 10 years walked off with my company, my house and my name, and left me holding a federal tax bill for $412,000. I am going to tell you how far down a man goes when a whole county decides he stole from his own men, and what that last year of my marriage ended up costing her, down to the one thing she was proudest of. My name is Rayco Volchik. I built a remodeling company out of a truck with a bad clutch and a ladder I bought used, 11 years of it. The winter, the work went to nothing. I kept 5 men on the books for 11 weeks out of my own account and told them it was a slow client paying late. And one of them, Wendell, worked it out about 2 years later and never once said so to my face. He just started showing up 20 minutes early, every day, for the next decade. That is the kind of thing I thought counted. My father was a plasterer who never raised his voice in a house he was working in, and what he drilled into me was that you do not make a scene. You take the smaller half, you keep the peace, and it comes back to you. I believe that the way other men believe in a religion. D. Lee did the books, and had since year 3. Every quarter, she put a folder in front of me at the kitchen table and said, "Sign where the tabs are." And I signed where the tabs were, and she took the folder away. 10 years of that. At parties, when somebody asked how the two of us split the work, she had a line. "Ray builds them. I keep them standing." Everybody laughed, every time. So did I. Our 10th was coming up in October, so a year out I started putting a party together on the quiet. I booked the Cordova room downtown, the one with the tall windows, because she used to slow down in front of it when we walked past. I opened an account at a credit union across town and fed it side jobs on Sundays. A deck, a set of stairs, a bathroom vanity, so none of it would show up in the books and spoil it. The whole thing lived in a green binder in my mother's garage, under a bag of grass seed, and in it was the guest list, which I had asked D. Lee to look over one night when she was tired, telling her it was for a job site barbecue. On the back, in her handwriting, was a column of figures I took for grocery math, and under the column 2 words and a date. 8. That was October, which was also the last month my company sent $1 of payroll tax to anybody, though it took another 8 months for me to find that out. In March, I came off a scaffold on the Fairmount job and landed on my shoulder. They pinned it on a Tuesday. D. Lee. I brought a folder to the hospital because a supplier needed a signature, and I signed it in bed with my left hand and felt useful. Hold on to that Tuesday. It comes back. The first letter from the Internal Revenue Service came in June, and I did not open it. I handed it to her. The second came certified in August, and I stood on my own porch and read that my company had not sent in $1 of withheld payroll tax in 4 quarters. I asked her, and she cried and said she had got behind and would fix it, and I believed her, because she had never been behind in 10 years. In September, she filed, moved out for 8 days, came back, and I thought that was the whole storm. It was the setup. When the government goes looking for somebody to hang 4 quarters of missing payroll tax on, they sit you in a room and ask who signed the checks and who decided which bills got paid. I said what a man says when he is trying not to make a scene about his wife. I said I was the owner. I said. The buck stopped with me. I signed the statement, and it took 11 minutes. That statement is the reason the bill has my name on it and not hers. It is also the last kind thing I ever did for her. Then in October, the month of the party, her lawyer filed the paper that took the company. It said I had transferred my whole interest to her, freely, and there was my signature, and a notary's stamp, and a date. The date was that Tuesday in March, the Tuesday I was face up in a hospital in Bellingham with a titanium plate going into my shoulder. I told my lawyer, who I could afford for 6 more weeks, and he wrote it down and put it in a drawer, because I had no money to make anybody open it, and she told it beautifully. That poor woman, married to a man who took the withholding out of his own crew's checks. She said it with her eyes wet at the counter of the paint store, where every builder in the county buys his tape. She never once used the word thief. She let people get there on their own, which is worse, because then they think they thought of it. Wendell would not shake my hand at the lumberyard. Lot looked at my hand, then at the concrete, said he had to get his order in, and walked around me the way you walk around a spill. I sat in that parking lot for 40 minutes. Then the crew, Desi Prine, who I had carried through that 11-week winter, came to the shop for his last tools and would not step inside. He stood in the doorway and asked me straight out if I had taken it out of their checks. I said no. He nodded and took his tools, and I watched him tell the other 2 in the lot what I had said, and I watched all 3 of them decide. The truck went in November. They came at 6 in the morning, and the man was decent about it, and let me take my father's belt out of the back. The rest of the tools were sold at auction in a lot listed as assorted. I tried 2 supply houses and a cabinet shop, and the man at the gutter place said out loud that he had heard, and could I please not come back. So I unloaded trucks at night at a food terminal an hour away, on a badge that said Michael, which is my middle name, because Kovalchik had been in the paper twice. The house went in February. It went to the divorce, and then it went to the bank, and I got a plastic tub of my own things left out on the porch in the rain. My grandfather's belt buckle was not in it, and I never asked. Jia Z was 15, and she had been on my hip at job sites since she could walk and knew the smell of cut cedar before she knew her multiplication. In March, she asked me on the phone, very politely, the way you ask a stranger for directions, whether I had really taken money out of the men's checks. I said no. There was a pause on her end that I can still hear. Then she said, "Okay, Dad," in a voice that was doing me a favor. She stopped calling after that. In April, 2 men caught me behind the bar on Del Moore, where I was renting a room upstairs. I went down on the gravel and stayed down, because down is where it ends fastest. I woke up with my glasses folded into my shirt pocket, snapped in half, and what I remember thinking is that somebody had taken the time. The room above the bar went the week after, because the landlord had heard. By June, I was living in a van with a dead alternator behind a laundromat on Route 9. And I want you to hold on to something, because it matters later. I was parked about 400 feet from a shipping store, and I did not know yet what was getting its mail there. A dog that hangs around a laundromat gets fed. People bring it things. I got a note on the windshield about the van. That is where I lived for 11 weeks. A badge, said Michael, and by August I had gone 6 weeks without hearing anybody say Ray out loud, and it had stopped landing when they did. One night I did the arithmetic, very calmly, the way you work up a materials list. How many days before somebody noticed the van had not moved? I got to 11. 11 days. That is what got me out of the van. Not the cold and not the pride, the number. 11 days was too low to be a true thing about a man, and I decided I was going to argue with it. In September, my mother sold the house on Ridge Street and rang me about a green binder in the garage, under a bag of grass seed. Did I want it or should she put it out? I borrowed her neighbor's car and sat on the floor of that garage for 2 hours. Cordova room contract, deposit paid in my name, out of the credit union account. The songs on the back of an invoice, and the guest list. 11 names on the front in her hand, and on the back that column of figures I had taken for grocery math. It was not grocery math. It was a split. 60 and 40 worked 3 different ways, and under it 2 words and a date. Halverson, March. Halverson Property Group was the supplier my company had been paying round numbers to on the last Friday of every month. No yard, no trucks, no telephone a human being ever answered. A mailbox at a shipping store on Route 9. And 2 members, my wife and the accountant she hired that spring, a man named Gareth Lane, who wore driving gloves in a town where nobody drives anything worth gloves. It was formed in March, and she wrote its name on the back of our anniversary guest list 5 months before it existed. I sat there with the binder on my knees and thought about my father, who died owing a bill he was too polite to send. That was the night I stopped being polite. Here is the thing about the statement I signed in that interview room. It is a federal document. It went into a federal file, and a federal file about you is a file you are allowed to ask for. Nobody tells you that. I found it on a library computer, filled the request in with a pen, and waited 4 months, because that is roughly how long it takes. What came back was a padded envelope with 200 and some pages in it. Mine was in there. So was hers. Because they interview everybody, they might be able to hang it on. And she had sat in that same room 4 days after I did and answered the same questions. She said she never had authority to sign a company check. She said her husband handled all of that, and she only did data entry. She signed it under penalty of perjury. 10 years of canceled checks with her signature on them. 10 years of a woman telling a room full of people that she kept it standing. I made 4 copies that afternoon, and one went into a safe deposit box at the credit union. $35 a year, the best money I have ever spent. Second thing, and this one cost $9. The transfer that took my company was notarized at 11:20 on that Tuesday in March. And at 11:20 on that Tuesdays, I was in recovery in Bellingham with a nurse writing my pulse down every 15 minutes. And hospitals keep that. The notary who swore I had stood in front of her worked 2 desks from Gareth Lane. I mailed the state 3 pages of dates with no adjectives in them, and 6 weeks later she gave up her commission and left D. Lee standing on her own beside a filing with a hole in it. Third, I stood in Wendell's driveway on a Saturday in February with 1 page in my hand. Not the tax bill, not the divorce. Her statement where she swore she had never had authority to sign a company check. Wendell read it standing up in the cold twice. Then he went into his garage and came out with a shoebox, because Wendell keeps every pay stub anybody has ever handed him. And in that box were 10 years of checks signed in her round, careful hand. He did not apologize, and I would not have known what to do with it if he had. He said, "What do you need?" I said, "I need the other 4. By March, I had 5 men who would put their name to a statement about who ran the money in that company, and one of them was Desi Prine, who cried in his own kitchen and made me pretend I could not see it. Now the 4th thing, and this is the one she never saw, and I want you to see it while she cannot. A construction company does not hold a license. A person does. The company hangs its license on a licensed individual, and every permit that company pulls, it pulls on that individual's number. That individual was me. She took my name off the company at the state and left it on the license at the board, because taking it off the license would have shut her down inside a week. My number, my name, the school gymnasium, the municipal parking structure, the 42-unit build on Connery Road, 2 years of permits, all of it pulled on a man she had told an entire county was a thief. There is a form for what I did next, and it is 1 page. You check a box saying you are disassociating from the licensee. You sign it, you mail it, and the state gives that company 90 days to put another qualified person on the license. If they do not, the license goes inoperative. Not revoked, not suspended for cause. It simply stops being a license, quietly, on a website anybody can look at. I mailed that form in the first week of March. Then I did nothing at all for 90 days, which was the hardest work of my life. Because here is what I knew, and she did not. Her bank line and her bonding company carried the same clause every builder signs, and nobody reads that the license stays active or the money stops. And the Builders Association was giving her an award in June, Businesswoman of the Year, at the Cor do Vu room, in the room with the tall windows, which she picked for the same reason I had picked it a year earlier with money I earned on Sundays. 2 weeks out, Wendell stopped answering me. 4 days of nothing. I drove past his house twice, like a man I did not want to be. On the 5th day, he rang and told me Lane's firm had offered his boy an apprenticeship. 4 years, paid. The thing Wendell had wanted for that kid since the kid was 9. He said it flat, like a man reading a meter. He said he had a family. I told him I understood, and I meant it. And I hung up and sat with my hands on the wheel of a vehicle that did not run. No foreman, 4 men who would follow Wendell wherever Wendell went. She did not think about, because people who buy things assume everybody sells, is what a man like Wendell does with a text message. He did not delete it. He forwarded it to me at 10 past midnight, the offer, and the sentence underneath where she asked him to stay out of it. Then he wrote 2 words, "Sorry, keep it." He took the apprenticeship for his son, and I would have done the same. He also drove 90 minutes on a Thursday in June to stand at the back of a room in his church suit. The Cordova room holds 240 people. My association dues had been coming out of that credit union account for 4 years at $12 a month, automatic, because I opened that account to pay for a party and never thought to close it. Which means that on the night my wife collected her award, I was a member in good standing of the association, handing it to her. And a member in good standing can buy a ticket. $65, table 19 by the kitchen door. I wore a suit that had fitted me 2 years and 40 pounds ago. She found me during the salad. I watched her look at me and decide I was nothing, and she turned back to her table and put her hand on Gareth Lane's arm. The president got up and read the whole thing out. The school gymnasium, the parking structure, Khan Ari Road. Every one of those jobs permitted on my number. Then she came up and did 4 minutes on grit and gratitude and how nobody builds anything on their own. And then she said it. Ray builds them. I keep them standing. 240 people laughed because they had heard her say it for 10 years, and because now it was funny. And then, because she could not help herself, because that is the whole of her. She looked over at table 19 and said into a live microphone, in front of the bank and the bonding agent and the city building official, that she was sorry some people had a hard time being around money that was not theirs. That was the last free thing she ever did. The president is an old man with a rule about the floor, and he did not like what he had just heard in his own room, and he asked whether the member at 19 wished to respond. I stood up. I did not have a speech. I had a folder. I said that a year and a half ago my wife sat in a federal interview room and swore under penalty of perjury that she had never had authority to sign a company check and had never decided which bills got paid. I held up her page. I said, the man at the back in the church suit has a shoebox with 10 years of company checks in it, every one of them signed by her. Wendell held up the shoebox. He did not say a word all night. Then I said the other thing. I said the license this company has been pulling its permits on is mine, and has been since I was 26. I said, I filed my disassociation with the state in the first week of March. The 90 days ran out at midnight on Sunday, and if anybody would like to check, the state posts it on a public page, and it takes about 9 seconds. You could hear the phones. That is the sound I will take with me. 240 people, and a room full of little cliques. The bonding agent stood up first. The city building official at table 4 made one call from the doorway, with his hand over his other ear, and that call was about the gymnasium, which is a building we're going to be standing in, permitted under a license that had not existed since Sunday. Dee Lee said it was a technicality. She said it twice. And then, Gareth Mullane, who had been quiet for 11 months and had a great deal riding on a woman he had picked, stood up at the head table and said, into a room gone completely silent, that she had told him she had handled the license. He said it to her. He said it like a man in a car that is already off the road. Nobody had asked him anything. She turned round to answer him with the microphone still in her hand, and it caught every word. The association records the annual dinner. They have done since 1978. It took another 14 months. The state referred the license filing to the district attorney, and the transfer document with the March date on it was finally read by somebody whose entire job is reading documents like that. The tax people reversed my assessment in the spring because a woman's sworn statement and 10 years of her own signature cannot both be true, and they moved all $412,000 of it onto her. She was charged in August, which I noticed, and which I am not going to pretend I did not notice. Gareth Mullane testified about the 60/40 and kept his own license and lost everything else. The company is gone, not sold, dissolved with a line drawn through the name. I have my number back clean in a truck with 90,000 miles on it, and Kovalchik on the door in plain white letters, because I am not hiding it anywhere ever again. Wendell is on the paperwork now instead of the payroll. Desi Prine came back the first week and did not mention any of it, and neither did I. Ja Z is 17. And she comes on Sundays, and she is easy with me about nearly everything. And then some weeks she goes quiet in the truck for a mile or two, and I let her, because she had to believe one of us, and she picked wrong and she knows it. That is the part that is not fixed. I do not think it fixes. The Cordova room rang me last spring about the deposit, because it had been sitting on their books for 4 years and their accountant wanted it gone. I used it. 41 people, the crew and their wives and Wendell's boy, in the room with the tall windows, on a Saturday in October. Nobody gave a speech. I had the songs off the back of that invoice played, all of them, because I picked them for her, and I was not going to let her keep those as well. My father was wrong, and I loved him, and he was wrong. Keeping the peace is not the same as keeping the truth, and a marriage where only one person is writing things down is not a marriage. It is a set of books. So let me ask you something. And be honest, because nobody is going to see your answer. What have you signed in the last 10 years without reading it? Because reading it in front of the person who handed it to you would have felt like an accusation. If this one got you, there are more of them on this channel. And the next is about a man whose brother-in-law spent 9 years being the family favorite. Subscribe, and I will tell you that one too.